My girlfriend has princess syndrome. I fully support my girlfriend, but I worry about drawing unwanted attention. Despite my concerns, she broke up with me. I have been with my girlfriend for about 5 months. We've been casual friends since college, but only began dating after she graduated. We get along really well. When I say princess syndrome, I don't mean that she's spoiled or entitled because she isn't. Her clothes seem to take over her life. She dresses like a sort of fairy tale princess on a near daily basis excluding at work. Long, frilly skirts, lace blouses, things like that. It works for her because she is very pretty and can pull it off. At first I found it to be very endearing, but then I became aware of how much time she spends on her outfits. She runs a blog that has a sizable number of followers, and she is constantly posting outfit pictures, links to clothing items and what. She spends a few hours a day on her blog at least. Then she spends time sewing items for new outfits or for her Etsy store. When we go out, we get a lot of stares at what she's wearing. Her unique style draws eyes like moths to a flame. People can't seem to help themselves from taking a second look, sometimes even a third. It's not just the occasional glance either. I've seen people stop in their tracks, nudging their friends and pointing her out as if she were a celebrity sighting. I've also caught people sneaking pictures of her on their cell phones, which is incredibly invasive. Once we were at a cafe, and a guy at the next table was pretending to text but was clearly angling his phone to snap a photo of her lacy blouse and long flowing skirt. Another time, a group of teenagers at the mall giggled and took selfies with her in the background. This attention makes me uncomfortable. It feels like we're always on display, unable to enjoy a private moment together. I tried to address this with her, asking her to tone it down a bit. She took my request to mean not wearing anything in her hair when we're out together, so she stopped putting on her usual flower crowns and headbands. While this was a small change, it didn't solve the core issue. She still wore her elaborate outfits, and the stares and sneaky photos continued. I didn't know how to explain that it wasn't about the accessories, but about the overall impression her outfits left on people. I've told her several times that I love her just the way she is, but she seems to brush it off each time. I try to emphasize how much I appreciate her unique style and creativity and how much it drew me to her in the first place. I want her to know that my concerns come from a place of love and worry, not criticism. However, whenever I bring it up, it feels like she's not fully hearing what I'm trying to say, or perhaps she's choosing not to. I had hoped that when she started her new job in the career of her choice, she would become more serious, at least in her professional life. I thought the new environment might encourage her to dress more conventionally to match her colleagues in the office culture. Instead, her new boss and co-workers encouraged her to embrace her style. They love her whimsical outfits and even compliment her on them regularly. It's like she's become the quirky, fashionable mascot of the office, which only reinforces her choices. While I'm happy that she's found such a supportive workplace, I worry that people won't take her seriously or miss how kind and intelligent she is because they're too focused on her appearance. I fear that her clothes might overshadow her capabilities, making it harder for her to be recognized for her hard work and talent. I know how brilliant and compassionate she is, but I'm concerned others might not see past the frills and lace. How can I talk to her about dressing more appropriately without hurting her feelings? I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to come across as controlling or unsupportive, but I also want to protect her from potential judgment. I need to find a way to express my concerns that balances my love for her uniqueness with my hope for her to be seen for who she truly is. It's a delicate conversation, and I can think of ways to say one half of that, but it doesn't work with the other half. I get the point that it initially drew me to her because it did. That's fair. I guess I didn't think it would be such a constant thing in her life, especially after she graduated. This is my problem. How do I ask her to dress more casually around me without her misinterpreting what I mean again, and also without hurting her feelings? I can think of ways to say one half of that, but it doesn't work with the other half. She doesn't need all the frilly stuff. Her natural beauty and grace are what truly shine through, not just the elaborate clothes she wears. I've told her she has an effortless elegance that doesn't rely on layers of lace and ruffles. Yet, despite my reassurances, and it's one thing for an artsy college student to dress alternatively, it's almost expected and embraced in that environment. Back in college, her style fit right in with the creative, free-spirited atmosphere. But she's a 23-year-old woman now, stepping into the professional world, where first impressions and appearances can carry significant weight. I worry that her whimsical wardrobe might not be perceived as appropriate for her age and the stage of life she's in. I feel like her clothing masks how smart she is and makes her appear shallow. When people see her in these fantastical outfits, they might not take the time to look beyond the surface. They might assume she's all about fashion and overlook her sharp mind and compassionate heart. I know how intelligent and thoughtful she is, how she can have deep conversations about a myriad of topics, and how much she cares about the people around her. But I fear that others might miss out on these qualities because they're too focused on her appearance. It's frustrating because I see her potential and the wonderful person she is, but I also see how society can be quick to judge based on looks. I want her to be recognized for her talents and kindness, not just her distinctive style. I wish she could find a balance that allows her true self to shine without the distraction of overly ornate clothing. I do think it's an attention thing. She says she doesn't care about what people think about her, but she spends so much time on her blog, replying to comments and such. I kind of doubt it. Her blog is a significant part of her life. She spends hours curating posts, taking photos, and interacting with her followers. If she truly didn't care about others' opinions, would she invest so much effort into maintaining her online presence? It feels like she thrives on the validation and admiration she gets from her audience. She's also told me that she loves being approached by little girls while she's dressed up. She beams with joy when a child comes up to her, eyes wide with awe, asking if she's a real princess. She often recounts these encounters with delight, describing how their faces light up. It's heartwarming, but it also makes me wonder if part of her motivation for dressing this way is the attention and admiration. She doesn't dress inappropriately by those standards. She is well groomed and doesn't show much skin. Her outfits are always neat, and she takes great care to ensure everything is perfectly coordinated. But is it appropriate to wear lace dresses and flower crowns to the supermarket? It's one thing to see such attire at a themed event or a festival. Again, it attracts unnecessary attention. People stare, some whisper, and others even take photos. While she might enjoy the attention, it can be overwhelming for me. I want to be able to do mundane activities without feeling like we are putting on a show. I worry that this constant spotlight might also affect her in ways she doesn't realize. It's not just about the looks and comments, it's about being able to blend in when needed, to be taken seriously, and to avoid the judgments that inevitably come with standing out so much. Update 1. After my initial post, I had no intention of updating, honestly. I didn't think I'd ever return to this. I've changed a lot since that time, and I thought I'd left the whole situation behind me. But when I saw this thread again, I realized that I needed to share what happened next. It's not the most comfortable thing to revisit, but it feels necessary. I owe it to myself, and maybe to some of you who've followed this journey, to finish telling my story. It was a Thursday evening when she showed up at my apartment, just like she had so many times before. There was a certain calmness about her that evening, an almost peaceful air, but it felt different somehow. She'd been acting a little distant lately, and I didn't know why. I had been racking my brain, trying to figure out if I had said something wrong or if I missed some sign of trouble. I thought maybe it was just the stress from her new job. Maybe she just needed space. So when she told me she was coming over, I was relieved, hoping that we could talk it out, maybe fix whatever was wrong. But as soon as she walked in, I could sense that something wasn't quite right. I offered her a seat and immediately started talking about dinner. I was trying to keep things light, joking about how I'd been practicing a new recipe I was excited about. She didn't even seem to notice. She sat down, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes downcast. This wasn't the girl I had grown so comfortable with, the one who always had an easy smile on her face and a million ideas bouncing around in her head. This was a different version, a more serious one, and I had no idea how to respond. I tried to brush it off, make her laugh, but the mood wasn't lifting. She asked me if we could talk. I tried to keep it light, asking half jokingly, "Are you breaking up with me?" But when I looked at her face, I knew right away that I had guessed it right. There was no smile this time, no reassurance. She just nodded slowly, her eyes glistening, a slight tremor in her voice when she spoke. "Yes, I think it's time." That was when my heart really sank. I had been in relationships before, but I had never been the one who was dumped. This wasn't something I had prepared for. The reality of it hit me hard. She said that it wasn't anything I had done wrong, but that we had just drifted apart. Our lives had changed in ways that made it clear we were no longer on the same path. Her new job, her hobbies, and even the way she dressed were all signs that we were in different places. She admitted that she didn't feel the same connection anymore, that she wasn't the same person who had started dating me. And it was true, she had changed, I had changed, and while we were both still the same people in some ways, we no longer fit together the way we once did. I remember feeling numb at first, like I wasn't really understanding what she was saying. She went on explaining that she needed to explore herself more, to figure out what she truly wanted without being tethered to anyone else. She talked about how much she valued the time we spent together and how much she appreciated our relationship. She needed to step back and focus on herself. I could tell that this wasn't an easy decision for her. She wasn't acting cold or detached, but rather like someone who was grappling with something painful. I tried to listen and understand, even though my heart was breaking. The conversation was not dramatic or full of harsh words. It was calm, almost too calm. In a strange way, it felt like both of us were resigned to the inevitable. We agreed to stay friends, though I wasn't sure at that point how possible that would be. Honestly, I was just trying to hold it together long enough for her to leave. She stood up to leave, giving me a hug that was bittersweet. She smiled weakly, wiped a tear from her cheek, and promised that we'd stay in touch. As she left, I stood there in my apartment staring at the door for what felt like an eternity, trying to process what had just happened. I remember sitting down on the couch, stunned, almost in disbelief. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was too shocked to cry, but I could feel the weight of the loss pressing down on me. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. My world had just shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for, and I didn't have a clear sense of how to move forward. In the days that followed, I tried to distract myself, but nothing seemed to ease the pain. I went through the motions, checking my phone obsessively, hoping for a message or a call. Of course, nothing came. Every place I went, every song I heard seemed to remind me of her. I found myself thinking about the way she dressed, the way her laugh sounded when she was happy, the way she would get excited about little things. But I also realized that, as much as I missed those moments, I had to respect her decision. I had to understand that we weren't meant to be together anymore. It wasn't just about the way she dressed or the attention it garnered. It was about us, about how we had both grown in different directions. I learned something during those first few weeks of being single again. I learned how to sit with discomfort, how to feel the sadness and let it pass through me instead of pushing it away. It was tough, but it was necessary. I also realized that, For all the tension and conflict I felt during our relationship, I had learned a lot from her. She had taught me to embrace my own creativity, to take risks, and to not worry so much about fitting in. She had opened my eyes to a world of possibilities I hadn't considered before. It took a while, but eventually I came to terms with everything, and I could appreciate the time we had without resentment. Update 2. It's been nearly 10 years since that breakup. I hadn't thought much about it in recent years, but when I logged into my old account here and saw the flood of messages, people offering advice, support, and their own stories of heartbreak, I realized how much I had changed and how much I had grown. The person I was back then, reeling from that breakup, feels like a distant memory now. I thought I had moved on completely, but seeing all those comments made me realize how deeply I was affected and how important it is to reflect on these moments. I guess part of me wanted closure, and writing this out in more detail feels like I'm closing a chapter that I didn't fully finish before. Looking back on that time with some distance, I can see things more clearly. In the moment, it felt like my whole world was falling apart. I was devastated, questioning myself, wondering what I did wrong. It wasn't until months later that I was able to look back and appreciate the lessons I learned from that relationship. Not only about her, but also about myself. One of the biggest lessons was learning that sometimes relationships end for reasons that are beyond anyone's control. It wasn't that we didn't care about each other or that we were incompatible in every way. It was that we were two people who had met at a certain point in our lives, and as we grew apart. Our values, our ambitions, and our lifestyles no longer aligned. I wasn't the same person I was when we first started dating, and neither was she. And that's okay. Life moves in different directions for everyone, and sometimes the best thing for both people is to let go. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that a breakup means failure or that something is wrong with you, but that's not the case. Sometimes it just means that you're no longer in sync with someone, and it's time to let go so you can both find what's truly right for you. After that breakup, I took some time to focus on myself. I traveled, worked on my career, and spent time doing things I had neglected in the relationship. I rediscovered old hobbies. I also worked through some of the insecurities I had developed during that relationship, particularly around my own appearance and my worth. I learned to value myself for who I was, not just for the way others saw me. It took a few years, but eventually I met someone who truly understood me. I'm now married to a wonderful woman. Her name is Kate, and she's 31, 2 years younger than me. We've been married for 4 years now, and I can honestly say that I couldn't have found a better partner. She's not the kind of person who dresses in elaborate, attention-grabbing outfits. She's simple, grounded, and exudes a quiet beauty. She's the kind of person who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, and I find that incredibly attractive. What drew me to her wasn't her appearance, but her authenticity. She's compassionate, intelligent, and down-to-earth, qualities that I had learned to appreciate in the years after my breakup. Kate and I have a daughter now, and she's everything to me. She's 3 years old, and watching her grow is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's funny how, as a parent, you start seeing the world through new eyes. I want my daughter to know that she can be whoever she wants to be. I want her to feel supported in whatever path she chooses, and I want to encourage her to embrace her quirks, her interests, and her unique voice. I'm constantly amazed by the joy she brings into our lives. As I reflect on everything, I realize how much I've changed from that person who was blindsided by a breakup. I've learned patience, resilience, and the importance of being open to change. Relationships come and go, but the most important thing is learning from them and growing as a person. I still keep in touch with my ex on social media. We don't talk much, but we'll occasionally like each other's posts. She's doing well, married to a woman now, and from what I can tell, she's in a place that makes her happy. She's still the same quirky person, although her style has evolved. The pictures she posts from her farm have an almost timeless quality to them, and I can tell that she's found peace. I'm glad to see her happy, even though we've both moved on in different ways. In the end, that breakup, and I wouldn't change a thing.